All right. So the next speaker has been a key figure in Brazil's economic policy for many, many, many years. He was Brazil's top monetary policy official as the president of Brazil's central bank. He has worked as in investment banks, and this summer he joined New, LATAM's prolific fintech, as vice chairman and global head of public policy. Please welcome on stage Roberto Campos Neto. Thank you for coming. So nice to have you. All right, you've got this like long career and long history. I want to like dive in so much on the central bank stuff because that's like, that's all the stuff that we all have to work with. But you led the central bank in Brazil for 6 years. What were the biggest lessons that you learned working in the public sector?
Oh, I think the biggest lesson is that you can make a difference. Your work can be very relevant for people. You need to create a mentality and incentivize people. You need to know how to move people in a different environment from the one that I was before, in which you have like investment banking and things like that. So you need to move people, to sell the dream, to kind of try to tell people this is where we're going, this is what I think is going to happen in terms of what will be the financial intermediation in the future. But I think sometimes we get more credit than we deserve. And I think the team in the central bank did a great job. A lot of the things that they did actually were much higher in quality than I expected. So I think it was a work of a group. I was just lucky to be part of the group.
Yeah, and I thank you for the humility, but honestly, I work with central bankers all over the world, and not all of them have the ability to execute. And you and your team were responsible for PIX. And I don't know if everyone here knows what PIX is. Would you give just a short description of PIX for the audience?
Well, Pix is an instant payment system that was launched with an idea to be part of a block. Pix was never designed alone. The idea was to have Pix, open finance, and eventually insert tokenization into what we thought would be the financial intermediation of the future. But Pix is a system that has a very, very fast adoption in Brazil. We reached 290 million transactions the other day.
And 290 million transactions, you told me, is like 2.3 transactions per
bankarized person per day.
person per day.
Yeah, we never. I have to say that we never imagined that in our wildest dream that we're gonna get to that. We knew it was going to be a project that was not only a substitute of the payment methods that existed before. We had TED and DOC. I remember one day talking to a CEO of a big bank, and he told me, "Oh, this is great that you're doing, but all you're going to do is you're going to substitute TED and DOC for this new thing called PIX, which we can't charge for. So it's just going to, take money away from banks, but everything is going to be the same." And I told him, if that happens, I failed miserably. I think what's going to happen is we're going to create a different environment. We're going to generate inclusion. Millions of bank accounts are going to be open because of that. And in 2 year times, you're going to look at me and say that you actually made money with Pix,
Yeah.
which happened. So
That's pretty awesome.
so
Congratulations.
so it's very hard to tell people in the beginning that you are creating something in which they're going to have a smaller parts of a bigger, much bigger pie.
But why do you think that, because lots of countries have tried to do things like this, why do you think it was successful here?
I think we paid special attention to the usability effect. We wanted to be very user-friendly. We wanted to have the standardization process in a way that it was easy to use in the app. We wanted the database of the central bank to interact with your cell phone in a way that you didn't need to type a lot of information, fewer clicks, transparency. But we also knew that because it's programmable, that you could add new features as you go along. I think when you start a tech platform, you always know how it starts, but you don't really know how it ends, because as you evolve, you realize, there's a demand for this, for that. And as long as you have programmability, you're able to change. And this is, I think, what we did. There are a lot of things that were born out of ideas that we didn't have before, like Pixac and Pixtroco. That's a very interesting story. I was in a place one day and in a wedding, and I couldn't, I forgot to take a tie, so I had to buy a tie. And I went to this place and they didn't accept only cash, they didn't accept any kind of money. And so I went to this ATM machine and there was a big line. And I look at the ATM machine and I thought to myself, why do we even have that, right? We have technology, we have a metal machine that, occupies a space. The money doesn't get here, someone needs to put the money here. If it breaks down, nobody's here to fix it. Why can't I make the cash register of the store be an ATM? And that's what we did. So if you link the ATM to Pix, you can actually go into a store and withdraw money. So you don't need the ATM anymore. So a lot of the ideas came from actually things that we
Came
learned.
from you not having a tie. Is that where most of the ideas?
That's one example, but
So how in that I want to dig in that. In that example, how are merchants incented to be able to be part of that?
oh, that's a very interesting question. I worked a lot with director at the time at the central bank, João Manuel. We looked into that case. It turns out that in some places like Brazil and most CMs, if the merchant can have less cash at the register at the end of the day and do more sales, for him it's better. Because the cost of carrying cash around is expensive. You always have the incidents in the smaller cities where you have crime. And usually the stores, they pay for people to be at the cash register because eventually they buy something. Well, it so happens that the Pix, Sac, and Troco, not only you don't pay, but you receive for that. So it's a way to put clients in your store, and you actually get paid for it.
So this is the thing that I think is so interesting is you probably wouldn't have expected that to be the answer when you got it, but when we actually research and understand what happens, that's how we make technology better and make it fit this situation.
Yeah, there are a lot of situations in which you have to prioritize things because you have too many ideas at the same time. And I think the people at the central bank, especially the people that are doing more the operation and the technology part, they kind of sometimes say, okay, we can do this, but we cannot do everything. So we need to, and that's what we did, I think. But it was a project that we had a good group. So everybody worked a lot on that.
So now you took that work, the very successful work that is going to continue to grow here in Brazil. And now 4 months ago, am I right? 4 months, you moved to New. And how's that?
3 months, yeah.
3 months.
Well, I left the central bank. I always liked technology and finance. I had to read in the papers just almost every other day that I was going to be a politician and so on and so forth. And I've always said two things since the first moment that I joined the central bank. The first thing that I said is I don't believe that you should do more than one term. And when we created the autonomy law, that's something that was actually harder than PIX to do it, but some people now forget it because they take it for granted. But it's very important to preserve the autonomy of the central bank. But when we were designing the autonomy, one of the things that I wanted to have in the law is that you're forbid to do more than one term, right? Well, that didn't go through because when you got to Congress, people didn't think it was a good idea for political people not to be able to be re-elected, so that didn't go through. But I've always said two things. I would never do a second term. I think it's important to have the change. And I wouldn't follow a political career. But every time people doubted that, I always said I like finance and technology. I either going to do something on my own or going to work for someone that's doing something that I think has, similarity to my views. And I think New is very similar to what I thought. I mean, it's a tech company. It's much more tech than finance, especially now that I'm there, I can tell you. It was amazing because they were able to bunkerize people at a low cost. The fact that the clients like New so much and the fact that the client base expanded so much with very little expenditure in marketing is basically mouth to mouth. That was always something that impressed me. How can you have this bank all of a sudden it's competing to the bigger banks in Brazil? They have very little expenditure in marketing. When you talk to the clients, they really like the bank. They really enjoy the experience. So I was interested. I started to look at what they're doing, and I think we had a fit because it was bancarization, was technology, was finance. They're always open to innovation, to do new things, which is something that I like. So.
And that was part of it. You did this at the central bank, focusing around what innovation could do, what technology could do to help things. And now New Bank, you're looking for that same sort of vision as to what technology can do to make changes there. Now, when you think about the blockchain strategy at New Bank, like where is it and where is that headed?
I try to think, what is going to be the game from here. I remember in a presentation that I had in 2019, I had a slide that basically said that eventually there would be a run to create an ecosystem, right? And I had this slide that had content, payments, ads, and messaging. And at the time, I said, okay, we are going to have eventually these ecosystems in which what you create is you create a higher marginal cost for people not to be in the ecosystem, and those are the winners. At the time, I thought that some of the big tech companies were very well placed for that. Remember at that time that Google was doing the Google Chats, and the Meta guys and the WhatsApp, they wanted to do payments, so it was going in the way I thought it was going to go. It turns out that I still think that the ecosystem is what people will be looking at, but it's not being done by tech companies. If you look at what Nubank is doing, Mercado Livre is doing, a lot of these companies are doing, is they're trying to create an ecosystem in which the client gets into your app and he can do a lot of different things. He feels that he has a good experience, and you offer many different products, and it becomes very expensive for the client, for the person not to be in the ecosystem, because it can be served in many different ways. The only thing that I had added to that vision that I have from a long time is I don't think this is the only way you can win right now. I think you can also win if you're clearly superior in AI. So I think either if you have a good ecosystem that you can lock people, or if you have a superior AI that will also be able to lock people. If you are able to do advisory or some kind of services with AI that you can escalate, you can serve many people at a very cheap cost, then you can also be a winner. And I think blockchain plays a part in both strategies. But if we can go to a different stage, which I think is the most relevant right now, is I think blockchain will play a very important part in uniting the digital space to the traditional banking system. I think that's probably the one task that we're going to need to find a solution. When central bankers today get around and talk about the issue, the first issue that comes up all the time. I was in the BIS meeting in June, and that was one of the main presentations. Is you have this growth in digital assets, stable coins growing a lot, and how can we make sure that we have a growth in the digital assets that does not disintermediate credit? If you look at credit as a function, it's getting attacked by many things at the same time. So you have the countries that owe a lot of money and it's into the credit function because the government needs to borrow. Then you have all the subsidized credit, and now you have all these digital assets in which people buy in these wallets, and so you have to withdraw money from a bank to put in a wallet. So the bank has less deposits and therefore has less ability to do credit. So I think the main issue that we're going to need to solve is you need to find a solution in which a bank can actually take a deposit in a form of a token or a digital asset and can do credit on the top of it.
When we were talking beforehand, talking about the notion of credit and also the usage of stablecoins and the fact that so many stablecoins right now are just held and not actually used. It's one of the things we talk about all the time, that velocity and usage of the stablecoin is so important, and volume is sometimes important to the issuer, but that's not really something that demonstrates the value. when I think back about what you said about on your slide, when you talked about the ecosystem, so much of that ecosystem means that you have to have something, merchants, others involved to be able to get those stable coins to be used.
Yeah. So the first thing about stablecoins, and this was a very intense debate for a long time in the central banking community. I was kind of alone for a long time in that view, and I think now it's becoming a little bit more entrenched, which is what is the problem that you're trying to solve for, right? Wherever you do innovation, the first thing you ask is, okay, I'm creating this.
Not everybody, but that's what you should ask.
What kind of problem I'm trying to solve? And then you look at the reason why people have stable coins. If you look in EM, which is the bulk of the growth right now is in emerging market countries. Well, in the last 3 months it changed a little bit, but let's assume this is still truth. Well, people have stable coins in EM countries because it's a very cheap way to have an account in dollar, right? If you want to be a Brazilian, if you want to have an account in dollar, or have an account called to 689, or if you want to do something like that, you need to be very rich. So all of a sudden, if you wake up one day and you want to have like $100 or $150, you can have it. And so that's, I think, one of the reasons why that is growing. If you look at the correlation between growth of stablecoins and other factors, you're going to find out that non-convertible currencies, countries that adopt non-convertible currencies, have a higher growth in stablecoins than the ones that adopt convertible currencies. Why? Because in a convertible currency, you can have an account in dollar in your country, so you don't need to have a stablecoin, you could have that. Also, countries in which people fear the restriction of capital, so eventually you won't be able to get your money out, those are countries in which stablecoin is growing much more than in countries in which you have free mobility of capital. So that tells you that really people are buying dollars to have it in a safe way. Then the second question is, but are people using this for as a transactional instrument or as a reserve of value? And if you look at the turnover of stable coins and compare to quasi-money, it's much lower. So if the turnover is much lower, it has to be the case that people are not buying that to transact. They're buying as a reserve of value. And I think a lot of things come out of that, understanding why this is happening. You think that this will change. And I think it's changing slightly already. But I think at the end, we go back to the other questions, which is, if I can have a solution in which I merge the stablecoin, the digital space, to the traditional banking, I can have someone that has a wallet of stablecoin and has a debit card and can, on his phone, download the debit card with money from the stablecoin, can go in any store and buy something. And that's what we're trying to do at Nubank.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that's the whole, we see this happening in our space now, where you can have a dollar-backed bank account with stable coins, and then you can have a debit card attached to it. And we see so much more usage when that actually happens. I think we both agreed, though, that when we actually can use U.S. Treasury-backed assets or assets that are yield-bearing, whether they're U.S. Treasury or anywhere,
Yeah.
that's a game changer for if we can use it for payments.
Yeah, I remember being also in a meeting at the Treasury, not in this government, the last government in the U.S., the last government in the U.S., and they were having a lot of questions on stable coins, and if a lot of doubts on stable coins. And I remember I made a comment in a meeting that people look at me and I said, well, if I were you in the Treasury Department, I would love to have stable coins all over the place because that's a natural demand for treasure. I think this government now sees much more in that way.
Yep.
There's a high stimulus for the usage of stable coins. And as long as the stable coins are in dollar, you create a natural demand because other countries have had regulations that I think delay the system. What you see today is the stable coins in dollars are like more than 99% of the stable coins. So you started to see the Europeans getting very nervous about that. I think Europeans will very soon start to stimulate stablecoins in euros, but it hasn't happened yet. And I think we are so far out in the story of the stablecoin dollar there's going to be hard to reverse that very fast.
Yeah, I think that's right. And you think about all the different issuers globally of U.S. dollar-backed stablecoins, and there are many, but there are only a few that rise to the top. So we'll end on the question about what can blockchain projects do with Nubank as Nubank is exploring its blockchain work.
It's like I said, I think the main thing that we want to do is how do you create an ecosystem that has this ability to merge the digital asset space with traditional banking in a way that we can do full services. Because you have a lot of wallets now. But the question is how many people can actually have a wallet of digital asset and do credit in a sustainable way? You don't have many. So I think Nubank is in this unique position to be able to merge that. Nubank is actually we are creating two different banks. You have one thin layer, which is called Prometheus, which is a technology layer that will land in many different countries at the same time and do technology solutions. We have the banking, which will be in less countries, in which we have like a full banking license. And with time, these two things will merge. And eventually, we're going to have this one full bank with all the digital assets connected to the traditional banking system. I think this is where we want to go.
Well, I love that. And that tells all of you that you can actually think about how your project can help them to do that. Thank you so much. It was such an honor to have you.
Thank you. Thank you.